All right, welcome to an episode of WJ Live, the Waterways Journal. My name is Frank. I'm the editor of the Waterways Journal, and I'm here with two of my good friends, Sean Duffy, who is president and CEO of Big River Coalition LLC, and Ken Erickson, who is managing member of Polaris Analytics and Consulting. And Ken, I looked up that logistician is a real word, and I don't know if you put that on your resume, but I do know that you're an economist and you're a frequent contributor to the Waterways Journal. So thank you both for carving out a little time to be here today.
Thanks, Frank. It's a pleasure.
Good to be collected here, Frank. Look forward to the discussion and appreciate the ability to get some of these messages out to the industry.
Yes, sir. Sort of topic is that Polaris and Big River Coalition LLC and another number of other people partnered on an economic impact study on the Mississippi River Ship Channel. I was going to get you to, in thinking about this, one of the first things that came to mind was what if someone viewing this isn't familiar with what the Mississippi River Ship Channel is? And so, Sean, I was just going to kind of tee it up to you. If you ran into somebody and this is like a waterway speed dating session, how would you introduce them to the Mississippi River Ship Channel?
So I would say the Mississippi River connects more miles of inland navigable waterways than the rest of the world combined, and that the ship channel is from Baton Rouge to the Gulf of Mexico. And the core project for the ship channel is the Mississippi River Ship Channel. We have looked at it for years and talked about the economic value and the number of vessels between 6 to 7,000 vessel calls for international trade. It's the only large navigable river connected to a large agricultural zone in the world, making it very important for, of course, ag products. It seems like every week in the news lately, there's a new discovery about a Native American settlement on different waterways, all tied to, in essence, the big river. There are over 250 tributaries to the Mississippi River. It's 41% of the lower 48 contiguous states that drains down the river. It's over 1.25 million square miles. We can connect to 31 states. We're connected to 31 states and 2 Canadian provinces. Just don't ask ChatGPT to name those states for you. I can't, Ken will laugh because he knows the story, but may have to explain that.
Ken's not saying anything.
Yeah,
Um,
certainly those states are a challenge for ChatGPT, and they pull up different ones. But the bottom line is the U.S. economy depends on the Mississippi River Ship Channel, and what takes place in Baton Rouge out to the Gulf of America is important, not just to the United States and to the Louisiana economy, but really to the world economy, where people are needing to be getting their food, their fuel, and their fiber, because it's the agricultural commodities, it's the energy commodities, and it's a whole host of other products that exit and enter that Mississippi River Ship Channel that really serve people from an economic standpoint.
Can you give me a little bit of the background of the study that you put together and you released just I guess just about a week ago? Who was involved with that? How did it come about? Also, what was the motivation for it?
So for years, we haven't really had an economic study that we could cite when we go to Congress and talk about the need for things like dredging and NOAA ports program sensors to help with safe navigation. And also, we're often having to shut down the river for periods of 12 hours at a time for dredge projects, sometimes for revetment projects. So these channel maintenance issues, I won't say they're problematic because they're necessary, but when we shut the channel down for 12 hours, there's an impact. And a few years ago, the Coastal Protection Restoration Authority in Louisiana was doing a project, and the borrow source for this long distance pipeline, there were two, and one of them was the pilot town Anchorage, which is what navigation preferred. The CPRA went with the lower Venice Anchorage, which is on the east side of the river. Pilot town's on the west. So to take the material from the lower Venice Anchorage, they had to shut the ship channel down multiple times. And it was we're sitting there saying, listen, you're not factoring in the cost of navigation. The cost of navigation, this slowdown, is much more than $20 million. Now we'll be able to cite what that number is. I remember it off the top of my head. I remember those, but I'll let Ken get into that. But and then with Governor Landry and some new leadership within the Louisiana Department of Transportation and Development, a close working group and partnership, this was discussed, and the Department of Transportation and Development said, we will make the funding available. And I'll be very careful because it was issued to Big River Coalition, with it all dedicated to go to Polaris team for the report. We're very careful, of course, because of the financial responsibilities, and make sure everything was accounted for, went where it was supposed to, and all the sign off. Louisiana Maritime Association provided some information, requested some information, as did Blue Water Shipping and the bar pilots. So a lot of data came from them. Before we could release it, we had to get their authority, their approval, make sure they were all happy. I will tell you that it's quite common for me to read reports and find an error and go through it. And Ken and I went through this thing so many times. I was like, man, if somebody finds a damn typo in this one, man, I'm buying them dinner, because I'm telling you, we went above and beyond just for that reason. And to date, nobody has pointed out an error. And but that dinner offer will stand. If somebody catches something, I will personally take them to dinner.
You got Frank thinking now, Sean. He's going to be digging in closer.
He's going to use Chat GBT.
Yeah, that's right. That's what I was going to say. Oh, man. Okay. Yeah, and that'll bring us to just some of the key findings. When I was going through the press release and then the story on the Waterways Journal website, now it was just, there are just some attention grabbing numbers, just some amazing numbers. And I've been around long enough to remember, talk about like when Hurricane Katrina closed the ship channel, the after a certain period of time, the daily impacts, and this just took that and sort of opened the book a little wider. So Ken and Sean, can y'all take a few minutes to just to unpack some of what you found in doing the study?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Frank. And when you look at this, and as Sean was saying, that there are many who really helped support this study with data, and that was important. And data is always the bane of our existence, but it's also important. And it's one thing for data to just sit on a computer somewhere on a shelf, a proverbial shelf. It's another thing to bring it alive, and to be able to work with the team that we did, together with Action Intel and Barge AI, and also Decision Innovation Solutions, and looking at and understanding what the data means. And that's where working with Sean, Big River, and the rest of the team that he brings helped a lot, because that every single day, you could be seeing, $275 million of just trade through the Mississippi River Ship Channel. And that's going through the key ports and the midstream operations, and that's just strictly exports and import trade. And quite frankly, when you look into the bigger picture, the Mississippi River Ship Channel actually supports on a daily basis of about $620 million for the entire New Orleans Customs District. And on an annual basis, that's like, $226 billion. And you start looking at those numbers, there's a lot behind them. It's not just that there are goods leaving the United States, but there's that jobs that come with it. There's the investment that takes place to support those things, and that gets to be important. But those things only can move when there's a system that is fluid, that is dynamic, and that is being maintained and then upgraded as necessary. And that was important. And as Sean said, you could have any kind of impediment. And there's a certain structure to the framework to this process that if there's an impediment in the system, then that just creates some sort of shock to the system. And quite frankly, what that means is, if say that's low water or it's high water or it's a river closure, you just need more transportation equipment capacity to move the same volume, because if it's low water, you're not able to load as much on a vessel, whether it's a barge or an ocean going vessel. At the same time, if you got that, say just reduced transport capacity, well, that leads to what? Higher freight rates. And those higher freight rates, if they continue at their prolonged process, they lead to some challenges. One, that for farmers upstream, they could see actually weakened farm gate prices, what we call farm basis, that difference between the futures market and their farm gate. And that's really a function of transportation. And as much as we were kind of joking about 31 states and 2 provinces, quite frankly, while Colorado does not directly touch the Mississippi River drainage basin, it feels the impact of an impediment. It comes back to that farm gate. And when we hear it from farmers and manufacturers and processors and miners who talk about that, because on one hand is the United States of America, as much as this is an important outlet. I mean, look, this ship channel, this Mississippi River ship channel, is an economic powerhouse. It's the America's commodity waterway. But when there's an impediment, there's at least some resilience in the system of options to leave other port areas in the United States. But that's not easy to do. It comes with a cost. But same time, if you've got that impediment, higher freight rates, consumers could see higher costs at whether they're purchasing fertilizer or they're purchasing some sort of goods, or they're penultimately at some sort of retail outlet. But if that continues even longer, it sends a signal around the world where competitiveness actually shows up elsewhere. And it really comes through the kind of the seeds of doubt, something that Sean highlighted early on and brought that out from a memo. I think it was Sean, wasn't it, that a Army Corps person prepared?
Yeah, yes, and I mean, some of this goes back. I mean, Frank, you referenced Hurricane Katrina a little bit. I mean, the longest closure of the river system in modern times, very few people would know what it is. You've heard me say it though, the grounding of the Marshal Konev. I mean, shut the river down for 21 days. As we look at these things, and then closures kind of come in 2 different shapes: scheduled and unscheduled. When we have a dredge pipeline issue, those are usually scheduled. We have revetment work going on right now. It's about to finish up later this week, but there's impacts to navigation. Now, a lot of times that'll be one-way traffic during working hours, no southbound traffic, no northbound traffic during working hours. So things get compressed and move at night. A lot of those 12-hour closures are 06, at sunrise and end at sunset, which means the pilots are moving a queue of ships either inbound or outbound, or sometimes they're going in both directions. They're jumping on one ship after another to get through that kind of convoy because of the delay to the system. And the seeds of doubt are, it's right now, and it's part of the river deepening the 50 feet. I believe we're at the longest period of time in the last 15 years where we haven't had a draft restriction, going back to 2022. So there's a lot of, we during High River, we've had different draft restrictions. We had a High River earlier this year. We were able to manage it without draft restrictions. The low water issues, for the most part, affect the river up above the ship channel. Of course, it's one navigation system. When the Corps has to build the saltwater sill, there's some periods of closures, scheduled closures, but mostly the dredge gets in and is able to work around traffic. So ship traffic isn't having a light load, isn't having to really be delayed. Where, and of course, one of the things that happens is the dredges that maintain the crossings between New Orleans and Baton Rouge, the dustpan dredges, are released to go upriver to focus on keeping the shallow draft side open, try to get barges down so that they can go out for export.
And Sean, you make such a really good point with that, because that seeds of doubt actually then gets out into the world, and our partners in business, our partners in the economy, they call and they ask the question, hey, is the river closed? Because we've heard there's restrictions. And you have to answer no. And Sean just made a really good point about the 50-foot draft, because during 2019 into 2020, we went 600 and almost 20 days with a draft restriction. That was an incredible period. And you think back to that period, that wasn't the low water years that we experienced most recently. So this idea of the seeds of doubt can be overcome because there's been some work done, but they're still there. And how do you communicate that gets to be important? Because when you do put on some sort of restriction or you have some sort of closure, higher freight rates show up. A 1-day closure, for example, is about a 1% increase in dry bulk ocean freight rates. And a 1-foot draft restriction is about almost a 2% increase in the ocean freight rate. So that cost has to be borne by somebody. And that goes through the system. At the same time, when you go through that and look at what transpires and you think about the economic impact to the economy, what's fascinating is on that ship channel, when we looked at it on the economic impact on jobs and the income and the output and the sales, if you will, when you looked at these closures on a 12-hour basis, it doesn't look that incredible from the standpoint that it's a resilient system. What happens is in a 12-hour period, yes, commerce stops, but upriver, it keeps moving. But as that gets closer, and if those closures last longer, now that starts to kind of expand. And when you look locally, that's where you see the great impact on the local parishes, that you start seeing some of that big impact that you start getting to, say, a draft restriction that could be on for 2 weeks at a time. And say a massive restriction, you're looking almost at $6 million on an output. And you start looking at the wages and income are going to be down by quite a bit. And that means there's not as many people working. Either someone's going to pay their salaries or someone's going to lose, or they're not going to get paid because they're hourly and they're not going to have any more income. They can't make up the income. And so that whole thing on the economic impact gets to be very real. And it's felt not only there locally, but it is, as we mentioned earlier, across the United States, but then also our buyers overseas. They need to have assurance that they're going to have a secure, reliable system that they can come to and source the goods that they need, or send to the United States what they have to offer. And that's where that ship channel gets to be important with that. As Sean referenced, the number of thousands of vessels that transit. It's a powerful system there, and that ship channel really contributes greatly to that.
Yeah, and this, I was just going to say, this isn't like just in time deliveries. Orders for cargoes that are imported or exported are placed weeks or months in advance, right? And so that, I feel like that goes back to why the reliability and predictability is so crucial.
And I tell you, when you look at that connectivity, as Sean referenced earlier, of the upper Mississippi River basin with the ship channel, there's a strong relationship on a number of commodities and products that when you look at some of the charts that was prepared by Action Intel and you see that flow of barge volumes coming in and the ship volumes going out, highly related. And similarly, there's a lot that comes in the United States through that Mississippi River ship channel that gets discharged onto a barge and goes right up river and serves the entire economy. So it really truly is America's commodity channel. And this is really an economic powerhouse for the U.S. and for Louisiana then.
So one of the things I want to touch on is 2019, 2020 2019 was the largest volume of water to ever come down the Mississippi River, much more than the 1927 flood, much more than 1973. And what is counterintuitive, and one of the things that I often have to explain, is people think you have more water, that means you have more draft. in
I
Southwest
was going to
Pass
ask you about that.
from Venice on down, the volume of sediment like overcompensates for the water depth. So those restrictions were related to the inability to keep it maintained with dredges. In 2019, we were pulling dredges from other places. We've done it before, we've been here, but 2019 was a year where not only the Corps of Engineers, but shippers around the world, people in other ports were like, what they were talking about the impacts that the river has because we were taking their dredge to come to the river. And the question was, how do we make Southwest Pass more reliable? So Big River Coalition at the time tasked with coming up with answers. That was, we need a budget of $200 million. We need the ability to contract dredges in advance. We need a regional dredge demonstration program. All those things happened in 2020. That's given us more ability to respond. Right now, we don't have a need for a dredge in Southwest Pass, but we have 2 early award hopper dredges ready to come as we need them. If they're not needed here, they can work closely in the region and some of like maybe go to Lake Charles, maybe Mobile, but be in the area for when they're needed here. That advancement, that a lot of discussions about that, those things have really paid off. And it's part of the reason we hadn't had draft restrictions. Low river is different for us because the channel remains deep enough. It's the shallow draft channel that doesn't. That shoaling happens way upriver. We have enough water, so that's why you've heard me say it before, but I call it Mississippi River chess. When we release a dustpan dredge or 2 dustpan dredges, the core dustpan dredges to go up river, the conversations are, hey, we're going to take that dredge for 2 weeks. I'm like, come on, it's going to be a month at least. Is it coming back? You know, what other options do we have? Over the last couple of years, we had hopper dredges working in Southwest Pass. The hoppers can go up to the crossings. We were able to do that. But it's also the chess component becomes, okay, we're exposed here. So how do we protect ourselves from that exposure? What do we do? What can we do? What other equipment is available? And those conversations happen at a really high level. There's some very good Mississippi River chess players. Some of them have unfortunately retired. I don't know who the Grand Master is anymore, but he used to be a fellow from the Corps of Engineers named Mayo Broussard.
Uh, I was going to ask, armed with the data in the study, what do you do with that? Does that help you when you go to advocate for getting those dustpan dredges back? Does that help you when you go to Washington to advocate for proper funding that goes back to maintenance or upgrades, like Ken was talking about?
It does, and I mean, like I'll just round it off. So say there's $100 billion in cargo movement a year, 275 million every 24 hours. When you're going to Washington and you're in need of emergency funding, I'll say let's make it $30 million. We're talking about a $30 million investment on $100 billion. We're talking about an investment to increase our availability, channel availability to say the Mississippi River is open. During Hurricane Katrina, I learned a very important lesson. When you tell the world your port is closed, everybody gets that message. When you tell them we're reopened, that filters down kind of slowly. I specifically remember getting calls 6 months after we had been reopened, wanting to know was the channel reopened. Everybody knew it was closed. So, of course, we send those messages, but when you suffer, people get that word. When you recover, they're not always there when you can ring the bell and open back up.
You know, and that's important because Sean earlier you referenced different ports like Mobile and Lake Charles and even you go over to Houston. This ship channel is America's leading commodity waterway. On an average year, they're doing, handling 470 million tons of cargo, upwards of over 500 million tons, a half a billion tons of cargo. And that's more than double the next waterway in the United States. And that's when you think about that volume, that's important. And it's not just the volume, it's the diversity of cargo and the diversity of countries that are involved. There's well over 200 countries that are moving and receiving, sending to and receiving cargo and trade and the part of the economy through this waterway system every single day. And it's well known, but to Sean's point, when there's an impediment, that seeds of doubt is real, and we hear about it, and that's important to be able to send a signal. Look, this is an important waterway, not just to be competitive with other ports in the United States, but as a waterway for the United States as a whole. If you've got an impediment here, that just makes greater problems elsewhere in the United States, and we overall becomes less competitive.
There's something I want to add to that, and Ken will probably have a better economic term or way to say it, but these numbers were kept very conservative. This is about cargo value. When you get into things like taxes, salaries, transportation costs, onshore transportation costs, those numbers, and it's quite frequent to see an economic impact report release where you'll see something like author's notations or based on author's experience. We wanted to keep that out. This is cargo value. It's defendable. It's solid. It stands there. Yes, we can say it's an exponential number that it would increase. The Corps of Engineers says for every dollar spent on the Mississippi River, there's up to a 90-to-1 ratio, sometimes 7.2. It depends. The flood protection maybe in the 30s or higher. But the return on the investment, the return on these numbers are huge. And I remember when we were working on the deepening, farmers were coming in and wanted to support. I mean, you'll remember quite well the U.S. Soybean Board contributed $2 million to the deepening project, to the state of Louisiana. And people asked why. And they said, we depend on you getting our product out, being able to move our product. And they also said things like, hey, when we're selling our soybeans, when we're selling our product, we're able to buy new farm equipment. Tractors don't cost $10,000 anymore. They're 1.5 million is not out of line for some of this special equipment. And we're buying more pickup trucks, we're buying more overalls, we're buying Skoal. I mean, all these things came out. So I don't know how you really capture that. Ken may be able to do it. I probably won't work on that report with him, but I'll leave it at that. But we did want to keep the numbers where they were solid, where we could verify them. They're based on, I'll let Ken go into this part of it, but they're based on data from the Corps of Engineers and the Census Bureau. There's no multiplier, there's no fudging, and one thing to point out is since 2022, the numbers we're not capturing. Ken and I have talked about LNG. Venture Global is a large, you could figure there's a lot of new cargo value moving. We're not including that, and I don't want to estimate what it is, but it's huge. And another commodity, another source of revenue we didn't think about, and it hit me yesterday when I was talking to a local reporter, John Snell, was that we haven't really talked about the impact on river cruise industry, because since 2022, it's really come online. There's a lot more vessels doing the river cruises. So these numbers are, I guess, eventually I'm going to be setting up for volume 2, right, Mr. Erickson?
Dig a little bit deeper there.
Yeah. I mean, I think we're in a time where like a lot of things are hyper local, and a lot of people are looking for the story, the good story to go along with what you're telling them. And I think what I'm hearing from you is that Mississippi River Ship Channel is hyper local regardless of where you are, because it impacts you, and it's got a good story. The data tells the story. One thing I like to do sometimes on these is, Sean, I think I've told you before that everybody that I know lives in a they're static. It's however I met you, I feel like that's where you've been forever. And I know that that's not the case. And I also know that there's some big news with Big River Coalition. So I was gonna just give you a chance to, I guess, tell a little bit more of your background and also tell about, what's new with your organization.
I appreciate that. I'm going to take a little liberty and start off with the Big River Coalition. I've worked on it for 15 years, kind of dedicated much of my life to it. I believe in the mission of it, but I wasn't sure. I've broken away. I've been under an umbrella, and broken away sounds like a rough term. I've moved on. I have the support. I was under the umbrella of the New Orleans Steamship Association and Louisiana Maritime Association, who've been great partners, supported me for 15 years, will be members now in the Big River Coalition LLC. But in early December, we were talking about the ability to keep the name, a non-compete, things that happen when you look to move on. And I was really disturbed about having to change the name, but I had another name ready to go. And then at a Christmas party, a Mississippi Valley Flood Control Association, my buddy Corey Keefe looked at me and said, I tell them people the Big River said this and the Big River said that. And at the Corps engineers meeting, the Big River took his shirt off. And he said they all want to know who the Big River is, and here I am the Big River. I got to keep the name, so Big River Coalition LLC. I'll continue to do the mission that I have been doing. Big River Coalition has never existed before 2010. Nobody else has really done this role. I'll admit it was originally started by someone else who would come into my office and tell me, everybody says, if I'm going to do anything with dredging, I need you. And I would look at him and shake my head and think, they're right. But I'm just going to say, I don't know what he's doing. I know what I'm doing, and I haven't stopped doing it every day since then. So explaining the Big River Coalition becomes difficult, but it's basically anything. I'm involved in many things related to navigation on the Mississippi River. My core members are port authorities, grain companies, energy companies, pilots, work very closely with the pilots. And in many ways, I kind of serve as a translator between the government agencies and the navigation industry to deal with things like dredge restrictions, dredge placement areas, revetment restrictions. When there's an issue, I get a call and we can spin up or get the right people on the call. So I'm a team guy, as you know. I come from I was a very successful rugby player and coach. I won 2 national championships. I feel like I'm still a team player, and it's a navigation team that I like to refer to as Team Mississippi River. Big River Coalition LLC is a part of it. I seem to get a lot of press and news and accolades, but I'm doing a job that is supported by a lot of people. I don't know how to do what they do. They don't know how to do what I do. And sometimes they may not necessarily understand it until they see the progress. They see ships moving, they see solutions, they see funding, they see the ability to make progress and really kind of advocate for the river. That's really what it is, maritime advocacy for the Mississippi River, a focus on the ship channel. But when things happen in upriver and Thebes and Grand Tower during low water in 2012, we were very much involved because any impediment to the navigation system impacts all of us. And sometimes I'm just like signing on to a letter of support. People do apparently know the name Big River, so ask to sign on support. And in return, a lot of times I ask those people upriver, or those farmers or ag communities, to sign on to our letters and support us, and they do. So hopefully the change has been happening since January 1st, so I'm just a few days in, but getting everything set up and properly done and moving forward, and look forward to growing the coalition membership and continuing to represent this industry. And the beauty is I couldn't do what I do if I wasn't passionate about it and didn't care about it. And I'm all in. Mississippi River is how I feed my family, where I see my sons working on the river. You know, I have 4 sons. All 4 of them will one day be out there on the river. Got one baby boy is Ole Miss civil engineer student waiting to graduate in May, and he'll start working with one of the engineering firms here on the river. So excited about it. It's a change in that things like invoicing, and I haven't done in 15 years. I'm going through some of these things that are you kind of take for granted, and then you remember, hey, my salary's not coming in. So I'm working my way through it, learning, but I'm dedicated to it, and luckily I've been able to keep the membership from the Big River Coalition has not changed, except we have 4 new members already.
That sounds great. I want you all on my team.
It's a
I
team
appreciate y'all
sport.
taking the time. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Team sport and with you. Those are 2 things that stick with me. And well, look, guys, this has been a great conversation. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day and telling us about the study. And Sean, looking forward to, and Ken, looking forward to working with both of y'all for tell the story of the waterways. And appreciate it.
Thank you, Frank. Thank you, Sean.
Appreciate both of you. Thank you, Frank. And I look forward to be able to share this link when it's done with my membership.